Well, let me just tell you a little bit about our speaker. First of all, he has actually, and this movement, the atheist movement, have been to other churches besides this one. They've gone to other Methodist churches. They did a Baptist church in Dallas, and so this is not an unusual thing completely. It's unusual for our church. And if you remember, Don has talked to us about possibly even setting up a class for non-believers, and so we're open to all of this. So I hope that the purpose of this gathering today is not to try to convert Terry, our speaker, to be Methodist, and he's not going to convert us to be atheists. I mean, that's not what we're here for. We're here to have an understanding, and we work with these, all segments of our society, different faiths, and so that's really the purpose of these meetings, is to have an understanding. Terry McDonald is our speaker. He's an executive, retired from a long career in property casualty insurance, related businesses. He's lived in the DFW Metroplex area for 55 years, and he lives in Grapevine for 20. He's married to Paula for 25 years. He became an atheist about 30 years ago. He was raised a Catholic, and he was involved in parish. He was raised a Catholic. He was involved in parish work before he became a sincere and comprehensive search for God in his 30s. He later changed into the search for truth, and as the other search proved to be unsuccessful. Terry continues to be an atheist activist for the last 6 years. He is currently the president of the Metroplex Atheist, a 501c nonprofit dedicated to defending atheist causes and providing social gatherings where non-believers can speak freely without fear of offending others or being offended themselves. In 2009, with the help of others, he founded the Dallas-Fort Worth Coalition of Reason, an umbrella group organized to facilitate communication and cooperation with non-theist organizations in the DFW area. He has served as the group's first coordinator for 2 years. He's also served on the board of directors of the Atheist Alliance of America, a national organization that supports and respects worldview based on the values of reason, empiricism, naturalism, I hope I pronounced that right, and respects and protects the separation of religion and government. And I introduce Terry McDonald.
Thank you, Val, and thank y'all for inviting me today. Can everybody hear okay? Yeah, it's on. Excuse me. And thank you, Mal, for taking the first part of my talk. Actually, I'll go ahead and say it anyway because I like it. My friend Roger Scott Jackson is not an atheist evangelist, but he plays an atheist evangelist. He has a one-man show, a very comedic show, and he says he's an atheist evangelist, but frankly, he doesn't really like to convert Christians to atheism. He just likes to make fun of them. And he particularly very fundamentalist holy rollers that take up the serpents. He tells the story of when he was a small boy. His grandfather was at one of the services and got bit in the eye by a snake. He said that wasn't all that unusual, though, because a water moccasin is not naturally a church-going snake. I know a lot of atheists, and with the possibility of Sam, I don't know any that are atheistic. I don't know of any atheists that try to convert Christians to atheism. And I'm not one either, and I'm not going to do that this morning. I'll be talking a lot about atheism, but my purpose is to increase your understanding of atheism and your actually, I've got in here your tolerance of atheists, but after being here for a while, I can see that this is a very tolerant group, and we appreciate very much you asking us here. Actually, in a gathering this size, statistics would indicate that there are some atheists in the room, besides the ones that came with me. And you probably think, well, this is a church-going group, and those statistics probably wouldn't apply to us. But let me tell you a couple of quick stories. When my sister died a few years ago, we had several family from out of town that came, and we had a big Irish wake at her place out in the lake. And And my first cousin, Rick, who was a Catholic. I mean, all his family was Catholic. He was raised Catholic, been Catholic his entire life. All of his family's Catholic. All his friends are Catholic. He's involved in Catholic church and parish work. When you walk into their house, you can smell Catholic. But anyway, he's I'll stay up later like me, and everybody's gone to bed but the two of us, and there'd been a little drinking involved, of course. And so he says to me, really late, towards the end of almost at the end of the evening, he says, to tell you the truth, Terry, I'm just as much as an atheist as you are. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He says, my dad was an atheist, and so am I. And I was kind of surprised by this, but not real surprised given my own history, but I could see, and I knew why he couldn't tell anybody else. I mean, somebody that was not an atheist, he could confide in me because I was an atheist and he trusted me. But he couldn't tell anybody else because it would ruin his whole life. It would just be devastating to him. That was a personal story. The second one is one of the saddest stories that I know. I get the emails that come through our website come into my inbox, and the emails that came into the Dallas-Fort Coalition of Reason website came into my inbox for a couple of years when I was the coordinator, and I think this came from that source. I got an email from a gentleman who had this story to tell me, and he was an evangelic, very devout evangelic Christian, and all of his family were just like Catholics. They all stick together, you know. And all of his friends were Christian and very devout. He got married. His wife got pregnant. They were all happy. But they decided then that when she went into labor, or when she was going to go into labor, that they would have the baby at home naturally. And what happened was she went into labor, and she was in labor, according to his story, for about 3 days. And they could not know, obviously, that the baby was in a position that it never could have been born naturally. And probably in trying to deliver it, it would have killed the mother also. Well, somebody finally came to their senses and said, well, gosh, why don't we take her to the hospital? So they did. And they performed a C-section on her. Baby was fine. The mother was fine. They had some complications, but no long-term complications. They were both just fine. The father, however, had some real difficult long-term complications. And it started because he asked himself, how can God allow my wife to suffer like she did for those 3 days? She's a wonderful woman, very devout Christian. How could God allow that to happen? And this began a thought process within him that eventually led to him losing his faith. And he wrote me about some years later, because it was a couple of years after his second child had been born. And this was the time when we had the billboards up in Dallas and Fort Worth. Don't believe in God? You're not alone. And he sent me this email because he didn't believe in God. And he was very much alone. And he told me the story. It was in quite a bit more detail than I shared with you this morning. But he had to tell his story. He had to share his secret with someone. And he had, to this time, he had only told me. And this has been about 1.5 years ago. And there the guy was, a rock-solid atheist in a group of very strong believers. And why didn't he tell anybody? Well, he couldn't. It would destroy his life. You know, in our society, if you're a non-believer, most believers are very intolerant of you if you don't believe. As I say, this group I think is much more tolerant than the average. And I've had other emails like that, a lot, not hundreds in the last 5 years, but I've had a lot like that I get from people. One of them, same kind of long story. The guy at the end asked me the question, how can I tell my wife I'm an atheist? And I thought, dude, I don't know. You know, Because I know a lot of situations where that has caused the marriage to end. I have a very good friend who it happened to. And so there's a lot of intolerance for atheists. All right, what is atheism? I mean, atheism is thirst, apparently. The simplest definition is that an atheist just doesn't believe in God. Now, there's some people that say that there are weak atheists that just don't believe in God, and there are strong atheists that say God positively does not exist. We have agnostics that are similar. An agnostic is someone who will say, well, I don't know if I believe in God or not. Or some agnostics say, it is unknowable. Nobody can know if there's a God or not. There are people coming down the non-belief register. There are people that are known as deists. These are people who believe that God created the universe, set the motion and the laws of nature up, and then just departed, and doesn't interfere with the laws of nature or in people's lives. Usually the people who say, well, I believe there's something out there, or I believe in a supreme being, they usually fall into that category. I tend to take the broad approach. According to the origin of the word, the Greek origin, A equals God, theism, A equals no, theism equals God. No God. I think that unless you have a God that you honor and you worship and you pray to, for all intents and purposes, you're an atheist. Not everybody agrees with that definition, by the way. Now, most people who are atheists are skeptics. That's how they got to be atheists, because they were skeptical. And I think if you scratch just about any atheist deep enough, you'll find a strain of agnosticism in there, because we don't know everything. We know a lot about the universe now, but we don't know everything. Perhaps there is some godlike thing out there. Maybe the deists are right. Even Richard Dawkins, in his book, The God Delusion, admits to a very small sliver of agnosticism when it comes to the existence of some God. But what we don't accept is the existence of the gods that are worshipped in the world today. We believe, of course, that all of those are man-made gods. We believe God didn't make man. Man created God. Man created God. That's correct. Why do we think that? Because we see positively no empirical evidence to support the proposition. One of the interesting things about faith is that even believers know what it's like to be an atheist. I'm presuming everybody here is a Christian, except for the ones that came with me, obviously. Do you believe in Islam's Allah? How about the Hindu god Krishna? No? Well, in regarding those gods, you're an atheist. And an atheist believes in only one less God than you do. And if you begin to look at why specifically that you don't accept Allah, you can begin to understand. I'm talking about specifically, look, why am I not, don't I believe in Allah? If you look at that specifically, at that religion, then you can begin to understand why we don't accept Jesus. Why am I an atheist? I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school, back to Catholic high school, and I entered Catholic college. Almost all of my family was Catholic. All my friends were Catholic. I was Catholic. Up into my 30s. I was involved in parish work. I was a member of the parish council. I was the president of the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine, which is the group that educates school-age kids who don't go to Catholic school. I was also a special minister of the Eucharist. which means I was one of the ones that passed out the little wafers that Catholics think are Jesus. That's true. That's what they think. Yeah, one time I taught sex education to Catholic high school kids. I taught the Bible. I taught sex education. Not at the same time, although that might have been an interesting exercise. Despite all that, I don't think my faith was very strong, because when I prayed, the only prayer I remember saying when I prayed alone was the old prayer for faith, which is, God, I believe, please help my unbelief. Obviously, that prayer went unanswered. I was married to my first wife for over 20 years, and the first 10 were very good to fair. The last 10 were long, slow, downward spiral into misery. My wife would never call it off. Her parents were married for the last 40 years of her parents' marriage. They hated each other, but they couldn't get divorced because they were Catholic. So I knew that she wouldn't call it off. So when it began to look like somebody was going to get seriously hurt, I decided that I had to call it off. And if you're a Catholic man, when you leave your wife, you lose all your friends. Because even if your friends want to remain friends with you, their wives won't let them. Because you are a bad example. They don't want you talking to them and answering questions. They don't want you giving them any ideas. So I lost all of my friends. So when my social network dissipated, I found that my faith was also gone. Every bit of it. It was like I was on a ship and it jettisoned a bunch of garbage. It just was gone, and I never missed it. Some people, when they lose their faith and leave church, they have a good friend that it was very difficult for him to do that. He had a lot of problems with it. I had no problems at all. The only thing I did have, I had the residue of this concept of God, because I believed in God my whole life, and so I began to say, let me see if I can find God. So I began a very serious look for God. I looked mostly at first in different Christian sects, and then to non-Christian religions, Eastern, and some other ones. I also actually began a study of the history of religion, going quite a way back into some serious religion, and boy, the things that people have believed over the years is just amazing. The closest I ever came to accepting another religion, I guess, was Zen Buddhism. I really liked Zen, but in the end, the supernatural aspect of even that, I just could not accept. And that's when I pretty much knew that I was an atheist. How many atheists are there? Boy, that depends on who you ask and how you ask. I'm going to give you some real quick numbers. This is from a recent Pew study. They seem to be fairly accurate. In Protestants, 51.3% of our country is Protestants. 26.3% in the evangelicals. Mainline churches, 18.1. Historically black churches, 6.9. Actually, at one time I went to a Catholic church next to a Baptist church, and I think they had speakers outside of and when you come out of Mass and hear them talking, you think not historically black churches, but hysterical black churches. No, they had a lot more fun than we did. 23.9% Catholic. Mormon, 1.7%, and that's the largest, except for the other ones mentioned. Of course, there's a ton of other smaller sects in Christianity. The total Christians, 78.4%. 1.7% Jewish, 0.06% Muslim. Now there's a group that they call unaffiliated. These are people who say, I'm not, what religion are you affiliated with? None. I'm not, the nuns, if you will. You say that, sometimes you say that nuns, they say, like Catholic nuns? No, none. N-O-N-E-S, nuns, the nuns. That's 16.1% in the United States. And they divide this into several categories: religious unaffiliated and secular unaffiliated. The religious unaffiliated is 5.8%. Now, I'm presuming that those are the kind of people that you would call deists that say, well, there's something out there, or, well, I think there's a supreme being, but they don't really practice any religion at all. And you know what my feelings are about that. But if you combine the secular unaffiliated with the atheists and agnostics, the total is 10.3%. What does that mean? The point is that secular unaffiliated are a large minority in the U.S. population. If there's 300 million people in the U.S., that means 30 million secular people. That's a lot of folks. It's the biggest minority, biggest religious minority, with the exception of Protestants and Catholics. Every other minority is smaller than that group. I think you can't exactly extrapolate that number to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but if you did, if you could, there's about 6.4 million in DFW, so there are about 660,000 secular people. Okay, maybe you know, that's a little off since we're in the Bible Belt. What if it's 500,000? That's a lot of people just in this Dallas-Fort Worth area. And there's 4%, according to the survey, that are atheistic agnostics. That would mean there was about 250,000 atheist agnostics in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. What if that number's wrong? What if it's wrong? What if it's half wrong? 125,000 people are still a lot of people. There's a lot of us around. And here's the thing. The unaffiliated was 16.1, but the people, the demographics of people between 18 and 29, that number is 25%. So you people have a lot of work out there when you're talking about young people. I want to talk about fallacies about atheists. These are things that people think about atheists that, and I'm not going to cover all of them. I don't think we got time for that, but atheism is not a religion. I've heard people attempt to make the point that atheism is a religion, but no one's ever made it convincingly. The magician Penn Jillette says, if atheism were a religion, then not collecting stamps would be a hobby. My friend Bajou in our group says that religion is to hair color as atheism is to baldness. Atheism is not a religion. Atheism is not a philosophy. Among atheists, there are quite a variety of philosophical positions. Secular humanism are atheists, and that is a philosophy of many, if not most, atheists subscribe to. And secular humanism is just pretty much, if you want to put it this way, the golden rule. Just treat people the way you want to be treated. You know, be nice to people. And contrary to popular belief, most atheists I know are. But atheism is not a philosophy. It's just a lack of belief in gods. There are no atheists in foxholes. I know you've heard that. This is just false. There's a large number of atheists serving in our military, and many have faced death without changing their beliefs. I don't know if anybody remembers Pat Tillman, the professional football player who gave up a multi-million-dollar contract after 9/11 to join the Army Rangers, and then was killed in Afghanistan. He was an atheist. Don't tell me that atheists are not patriotic. There's even an atheist organization in the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers. Excuse me. Actually, atheists in foxholes makes me think of a story. This atheist was walking through the woods, and he hears this noise, and he looks around, and there's a bear running at him at full speed, and he realizes that there's no way he can outrun this giant bear. So he quickly looks up to heaven, and he says, "God, save me!" And instantly, everything kind of goes darker. Everything stops. And there's this booming voice that comes out of the heavens. "You're an atheist. You've denied my existence for many, many years. I'm not going to save you." And so the atheist, he kind of quick thinking, you know. All of us atheists are quick thinkers. And he says, God, could you make the bear a Christian? Because he's thinking, you know, Christians are forgiving, and perhaps if the bear, if he's a Christian, he'll forgive me for coming into his territory or for whatever he's mad about, you know. So God says, the bear will now be a Christian. And with that, the sky lightens up, the bear stops running and falls to his knees, puts his paw together, and looks up to heaven. And the atheist thinks, thank God I've saved myself with my quick thinking. And the bear says, oh Lord, thank you for this food to the nourishment of our The next one is atheists' lives are without meaning. That's another fallacy. While it's true that atheists don't accept a universe that has a meaning, a cosmological meaning, in that why it was, you know, had a purpose for its existence, it does not mean that there's no meaning in our lives. Because we have no meaning imposed from us by someone or something else, we are free. We have the freedom to decide what the meaning of our lives will be. I'm astounded when I hear Christians say, you know, you atheists are just without, you have nothing to live for. You might as well shoot yourself right now. And I'm astonished that they don't realize that just not believing in an afterlife doesn't, you know, it's not, just because we don't believe in an afterlife does not mean that we don't have any meaning. That just makes the life that we're living right now more precious. We think, obviously, you think differently, but we think that this is the only life we have. And we've got to make the best of this life, because that's all we got. So, we want to make the best of it. Another fallacy, atheists are not moral. Some Christians said that the Christian nations and the atheists should leave. An atheist made the observation that if all atheists left the U.S. would lose about 95% of its top scientists and less than 1% of its prison population. Less than 1% of the people in prison in the U.S. are atheists. Most Christians think that morality comes from religion or God, and that's just not true. The truth is morality is the product of the evolutionary socialization of our species. Now that's a little bit of a oversimplification because it gets pretty complicated, but many studies have shown that morality is hardwired into humans. Does it mean we don't do immoral things? No. Did Christians do immoral things? Yes. So we're all moral. I say we're all moral. Certainly there are immoral people, but by and large people are moral. And the fact is that atheists are as moral as any other demographic group. The interesting thing, of course, is atheists are not moral because we seek a reward in the afterlife or we're afraid of hell. We're moral because we feel it's just the right way to live. Atheists are fools. Psalm 14 verse 1 says, "A fool in his heart says there is no God." We get quoted that a lot when we are publicly. For example, we were in the Arlington 4th of July parade. We had a big group with a big banner in the front that says Metroplex Atheists. So we get a lot of interesting responses to that. And some people say that to us, you know, fool in his heart says there's no God. That wasn't the most entertainment. No. The most entertaining one we had this year was, of course, you know, the weather's being like it has been. Said, "You think it's hot out there now? Just wait till you get to hell." But we do get that one. The fool says they're not in their heart. There is no God. But the verse goes on. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none that does good. That's the whole verse. I have a list of atheists in different disciplines, different ages. Some of them dead, some of them alive. I'm just going to read this list, and I want you to think about this during this time. If all these people are fools, and have done no good. And I'm just going to read a list. Hopefully you'll, it's a kind of a broad list, some young, some old, so hopefully you'll recognize some of them. Woody Allen, Lance Armstrong, Isaac Asimov, Dave Barry, Ingmar Bergman, James Cameron, George Carlin, Noam Chomsky, Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, Jodie Foster, Robert Frost, Bill Gates, Ricky Gervais, Ira Glass, Ernest Hemingway, Katharine Hepburn, Penn Jillette, Billy Joel, Diane Keaton, Richard Leakey, Bruce Lee, Tom Laird, John Lennon, Bill Maher, John Malkovich, Barry Manilow, Ian McClellan, Arthur Miller, Julianne Moore, Randy Newman, Mike Nichols, Jack Nicholson, Steven Pinker, Ron Reagan Jr., Keanu Reeves, Gene Roddenberry, Andy Rooney, Salman Rushdie, George Bernard Shaw, Steven Soderbergh, Julius Sweeney, Studs Terkel, Pat Tillman, Alan Turing, Eddie Vedder, Gore Vidal, Kurt Vonnegut Jr., Ted Williams, Steve Wozniak. I think some of those people have done some good. And it can be possible that none of them did any good? No. Some people say that Albert Einstein, this is the ones I usually get the pushback on, that Albert Einstein believed in God. Sometimes I use Einstein's quote, God doesn't play dice, it's evidence that he believed in God. But he was in fact an atheist. Here's what he said in 1954. It was of course a lie, what you read about my religious convictions. A lie which is being systematically repeated. I do not believe in a personal God, and I have never denied this, but expressed it clearly. If something in me which can be called religious, then it is the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world so far as our science can reveal it. Next fallacy. Atheists are angry. I know a lot of atheists, and by and large, they're a pretty jovial lot. I think the myth of the angry atheist may have been started by Madeleine Murray O'Hair, but it's kept alive by Christians who, the only atheists they see are ones that they see on television that are complaining because somebody's trying to stomp all over their rights, or the rights or the separation of church and state, which is usually the place where we run into each other. It's like years ago when I started wearing contact lenses. That was in the area when they only had hard contact lenses, and it took a while to get used to wearing them. So you would kind of tear up a little bit, and people would say, do you wear contact lenses? And I'd say, yeah. And they said, I can always tell somebody wears contact lenses. Well, of course, the truth of the matter was, once you become accustomed to those hard contact lenses, nobody could tell you're wearing contact lenses unless they really looked hard into your eyes. But they just assumed that they knew everybody was, that everybody that wore contact lenses, because they could tell. Same thing is true when you watch TV and you see an atheist and they're angry because they appear to be angry because somebody's doing something that they just disapprove of. I know a lot of atheists, and I have heard this story, it seems like 1,000 times. An atheist will get to know someone, make a new friend, let's say, through work or just through some other social gathering, and they'll get to be kind of friends with this person, and then after a while, it'll come out that, well, I'm an atheist. And say, you're an atheist? You can't be an atheist, you're too nice. So most people know that they, actually that was one of the points I was going to make earlier about there being so many atheists. You know atheists. There's a lot of people you know that you don't know they're atheists because they don't say. Some of them just because they don't say, and some of them because they're afraid to know what you'll do to them if you find out. What's it like to be an atheist? Well, sometimes it's pretty rough. Rougher for some than others, depending on your circumstances. If the people in the stories I told earlier, it can be very rough for them. If your friends and your family know, you can still be hurt. I have a friend who's an independent contractor who lost a 6-figure contract because the people doing the selecting saw a Darwin fish on the back of his car and inquired about it, found out he was an atheist, and didn't give him the contract. That can hurt. Mostly in our society, the damage that can be done to atheists are from their families, from their friends and from their employers. And ironically, sometimes it's the people that you love that can hurt you the most. Here's some responses posted on Facebook after American atheist Blair Scott appeared on a Fox News segment about the group's court case involving the 911 memorial cross. The 911 museum, they want to put the cross beam, and the American atheists sued him. Here's some quotes that were on Facebook. "I say kill them all and let them see for themselves that there is a God. Shoot them, shoot to kill. That's easy, shoot them." There's the people, Paul Alton, Bob O'Connell. "To all atheists, die and go to hell, ha ha. If I could, I'd shoot all of you in the head with a 12 gauge. Joe Martinez. "Shoot them, at least we know where they're going. Waste of oxygen." Casey M. Jones. "Nail him to the cross and then display it." Mike Holzcheck. Extreme? Yeah, but not untypical when it comes to atheist objection to a violation of church-state separation. "I'm as open as an atheist as there is. Everyone who knows me knows I'm an atheist. I've been on television quite a bit, particularly last December when we had a bus campaign and when we had the billboard campaign. I was on television a lot. And so a lot of people that don't know me know that I'm an atheist. But I'm careful. If I go to a restaurant or a car repair shop or anything like that, I'm careful. I don't want some intolerant Christians spitting in my soup or messing up my car. A couple years ago, I tried to get around a traffic mess by going around on the shoulder, and I got stopped by a cop and got a $200 ticket. When I went to the meeting I was going to, I told the story, and one of our groups said that they had just done the same thing in the exact same place and were stopped by the same cop. And he got a warning. The difference? I had Darwin fish in the back of my car. Can I prove that that's the difference? No. But I'm sure that Darwin fish cost me $200. It can be tough to be an atheist in Texas. I'm sure it's much more comforting to be a Christian. There's certainly a lot of comfort in many of the things that you believe that we do not believe in. But mostly, we're essentially the same. Atheists are just like believers, except our lack of belief in the supernatural. We're patriotic, tax-paying citizens. We love our families. We love our kids. We just want to get along in a world that's sometimes confusing and sometimes pretty harsh. Sometimes I think the only difference between us is that people of faith appear to prefer comfort over truth. But many atheists know that in seeking truth, comfort comes to us almost uninvited. And we reflect on that comfort, and as we reflect on that comfort, other things begin to creep in. Joy, wonder, reverence, and respect for the natural world. And we begin to experience that world in a way that a believer in the supernatural just can't begin to appreciate or understand. So being an atheist has its own comforts, and the seeking after evidence that demonstrates the truth has its own rewards. I'll be an atheist until I'm gone to glory or wherever I go. And that's all I have this morning. If you'd like to have we're going to have a question and answer, so if people want to ask questions.
Is your non-belief based on Darwinism, or that we all evolve over a period of time?
No, but it's reinforced by it.
I know you talked about the concern of being judged by those people who are of faith, but I often wonder, and I struggle as an intellectual Christian with the reverse situation, and I'm curious, the naming conventions for the groups and organizations that embrace atheism, DFW Council of Reason, the military ones involve free thinkers, would at least infer that the perception is that those of us of faith aren't free thinkers, that we don't function with reason. Is it the belief that Christians don't have the freedom of thought?
That's a good question. It's a difficult question for even non-believers to answer. I'll tell you what one thing is. We think that people who are religious compartmentalize their thinking. In other aspects of their lives, they are every bit as reasonable as we are in terms of looking at evidence and evaluating evidence. But when it comes to things of faith, by definition, you don't examine that evidence. You use your faith to answer the questions that relate to your religion. So there's a compartmentalization there. That's the way a lot of people view it, and that's the way I view it.
And the challenge is, as a Methodist, and this is where Stacy could probably answer this better than I could, but we're taught by virtue of what's called the Wesley Quadrilateral, and I don't know how familiar you are.
Say that again, please.
The Wesley Quadrilateral. John Wesley, who was the...
Yeah, I know the Wesley, I just didn't hear.
And that theory asks us to look at our faith through, and I'm going to mess this up, Scripture, experience, reason, and tradition.
You did very good.
But it asks, it requires of us that we evaluate those choices and things we do in our lives, utilizing not just Scripture, not just a blind faith, but a thoughtful and reasoned faith. And so it's a struggle, because we struggle with this as a family. We have several declared atheists in the family. So it is a holiday struggle on a regular basis.
Fun at Thanksgiving, son.
You can just lob something into the room and pretty much set everybody up. But the assumption in the reverse that we are not of reason in our faith makes for a really challenging dialogue.
Yes, I can see that.
One of your last comments you made, if I'm going to say correctly, is that being an atheist allowed you to appreciate the world in ways that Christians or religious people could not. I wish you'd expound on that.
When you view the world as 100% natural, it's much different, obviously, than saying, well, God created this and put it all here for us to do whatever He designed it for. You have to kind of look at everything and say, why did God put that there? Why did God put that there? Why did God do all these things? Ogden Nash's old poem, God in His wisdom made the fly, and then forgot to tell us why. Comes to mind here. When you don't believe in the supernatural, and everything happens as it happens, then you look at the natural world and you see, as I do, or as I think that it is, obviously we disagree on this, but that everything happened naturally. I look at a flower, I look at a bumblebee, I look at we've got a lot of hummingbirds at our house this time of year because we've got flowers that attract them. And my wife and I we see them all the time, but every time one comes, we just come to watch it. It's just so fascinating. The natural world has it developed naturally, and that's because of our completely opposed viewpoints. You could make the same point that I can't see the world like you do because I see it all as purposeful. You see it all as purposeful. I see it all differently. So we can't share that that view of the world. You can't share the 100% natural view of the world that I have. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, hold on just a second. Does that answer your question? Is that yes?
Can you prove that God does not exist?
I can't prove that there's not a teapot revolving around Mars.
So there we are. You can't disprove. You can't prove.
That doesn't make two ideas equal.
Sure does.
Well, I can't prove that there's not some God, but I can go a long way to prove that there was not, that God that Jesus was not a historical figure.
Oh, but we can.
But I don't want to get into that because we're not going to get into a debate. But I could present a lot of proof to that, of that. So that's why I say there's enough of agnosticism in atheists that maybe there was a God that made the whole universe.
My perception is that you just don't want to believe. Period. And that's really the issue. You don't want to believe, and that's okay.
I want to believe in UFOs.
That's okay.
I do.
Hey, Terry, let me jump in for a second.
That's okay.
This lady right here had something she wanted to say.
I just wanted to comment on that, and I am new to making myself known as an atheist because of so many of the topics that Terry himself has commented on today. And I have met a lot of atheists over the years. I've had a lot of intellectual discussions with them about religion and have a religious background as well, just like any other, almost any other atheist I know. And there is not one that I have met that has said, if there was not proof or evidence that was presented to me that I could study and that I could see for myself, that I wouldn't change my mind on that.
Okay. Go
You know,
ahead.
I think, okay, I'm gonna jump up, because I've been chewing on thoughts.
Can I interrupt just
Yeah.
just real quickly? Hey, we've got some folks that got to go pick up kids.
Yeah.
So if we could pause for just a moment, those of you that go pick up kids, please, just time to exit.
And we only got about 5 minutes left, so we're pretty close to closing up here.
Terry, I want to say how much we appreciate you coming and talking today. I think one of the things that really struck me is, Mal kind of mentioned that this developed out of a sermon series that our pastor did, and I think that's true. One of the things that we've talked about as a part of that series and as a church on and off is that for a long time, the church historically has kind of asked people to check their minds at the door and to come and accept things. And I heard some of that in your story today and some of your experience in Catholicism, and we know that that's something that the church has done. And so we're a church that really wants people to use their minds and think, and so that's why something like this is so valuable to us. So I have a comment and then a question. My comment is that much of the things you mentioned as struggles for you and turning points for people as they turn to atheism, I think the people in this room would recognize as some of our great struggles of the faith. We would name them things like theodicy. Why is there suffering in the world? Why does God allow those things to happen? We'd name those things eschatology and talking about what happens when we die. We'd name those crisis moments of our lives when we look towards for things like meaning and morality, and we look towards mortality and life. So those struggles in that were the same. We just come out differently in the way we process those things. And so one of the things I think that I've gained today is, from your perspective, what would the benefit be to an ongoing conversation between atheists and Christians, or people in whatever religious sect you want to come to? I'm kind of the belief that I think together we come to greater understanding of our own faith, of our own beliefs when we're in conversation with each other, and I'd just like to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, I'm one of those hard atheists. You can talk to the world goes flat, and unless I'm presented with some evidence, I'm not going to change my mind. Right. But yes, I want other people to understand why I think the way I do. I don't expect other people to change. As I say, atheists are not evangelical. We're not trying to get other people to be atheists because it just doesn't work that way. One of the things we say in our group is that people tend to come to religion in groups, but everyone comes to atheism on his own, his or her own. And I want to address one question, the question that you had about belief, and this is a response to what's his name? The wager. What's his name? Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who answers this way. Well, you know what? He says, okay, let's say we're sitting at a table opposite each other, and I lay out 5 $100 bills, and I say to you, if you can make yourself believe that there's $600 bills there, you can take all of them. Okay. Can you do that? Can you make yourself believe there's 6? You can say you do, and say, oh yeah, I believe there's 6, scoop. But if God could see into your heart and your mind, then that ain't gonna fly. So you just can't make yourself believe something that you see no evidence for, that you don't, I can't believe.
Yeah, but there's enough evidence out there. Have you read Mere Christianity?
Yes, 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 yes.
Josh, right now, we're gonna